Hey guys, tonight we saddle up for something a little different. You're not curling into silk sheets or unrolling a scroll beneath candlelight. Nope. You're rising on a cold plain where the wind never learned to whisper and the sun is still thinking about waking up. This is Mongolia wide wild and so utterly empty that your thoughts echo inside your skull like footsteps in a temple. You stand beside a huddle of shaggy horses, your breath fogging as you reach for the saddle strap. It's time to learn what Mongolian nomads packed for long journeys. And trust me, it's not minimalist. You'll probably survive, but don't count on keeping your modern comforts. No battery packs, no podcasts, just you, the wind, and a world that never needed walls. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing who's watching from where. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start at dawn, and by dawn, I mean a bleached pre-dawn glow that makes the sky look like it's been rinsed with ice water. The fire's long gone out, but there's still a faint warmth rising from the coals. A woman you met only yesterday hands you a bowl of something sharp and sour. It's fermented mare's milk, and yes, you're absolutely drinking it for breakfast. You slurp, you shiver, you nod in thanks. This is your first morning with the nomads. You're not here to gawk, you're here to travel. Today's a moving day, and everything must be packed, because home isn't a place here, it's a rhythm. And you're about to step in. The herd is already stirring. 30 horses, a handful of goats, 2 camels that look deeply annoyed, and 1 white dog with a serious expression who has apparently decided to guard your boots. You nod to him. He nods back. You've made your first ally. The saddle you're handed isn't soft or sleek. It's carved wood high at the back and front, covered with patched leather and sheepskin. A far cry from the comfy Western versions you may be used to. This one is made for survival lightweight, but tough, built to endure days of bouncing across terrain that barely qualifies as land. You run your hand across the stitching and find a charm tied to the horn, a scrap of red thread, and a coin with a hole in the middle. Luck, or maybe a memory. Either way, you leave it there. You're shown how to lash the saddle onto your short, powerful Mongolian horse, a breed that hasn't changed much in 1,000 years. Stocky, stubborn, and secretly brilliant. Yours blinks at you with mild disapproval. You get the feeling he's going to be judging your riding skills very closely. Mainstream historical fact, Mongolian nomads typically rose before sunrise to begin the day's packing. Every journey was timed with incredible precision, often around livestock migration patterns, seasonal shifts, and weather readings based on cloud-shaped wind and gut instinct. They could pack up and move an entire household in just a few hours, including collapsing the jeer, the iconic round felt tent, and preparing it for travel. Efficiency wasn't a virtue, it was survival. You help load packs onto the carts, thick cloth bags filled with supplies, wrapped in oil-treated leather. Some things are easy to guess, a grinding stone bundles of dried cheese iron pots. Others, less so. You spot a coil of braided horsehair rope, a polished horn, a rolled-up tapestry stitched with constellations. No one explains, and you don't ask. Part of the journey is learning what matters later. A boy barely old enough to tie his boots points at your feet and laughs. Turns out your new felt boots are on the wrong feet. No right or left, just warmed by habit. You swap them, and suddenly your toes sigh in relief. You thank the boy. He offers you a dried apricot in return. Not a bad trade. Fringe detail. According to one 13th century traveler's account, Mongol children as young as 4 were expected to help with packing, fetching water, and even herding animals during migration days. One man described a toddler carrying a goatskin bag of arak fermented milk slung over his shoulder like a warrior's pouch. Kids didn't have chores. They had jobs. You help tie down the last of the parcels onto a creaking wooden cart drawn by oxen. It groans like it knows what lies ahead. A man with a long braid and a face like wrinkled bark hands you a weathered map, not paper, but leather with creases and marks burned into it. We don't follow it, he says. We remember where it wants us to go. Historians still argue whether the Mongols carried written maps regularly, or if most wayfinding was oral and intuitive. Some claim elaborate star charts and knot ropes were used for guidance. Others say those stories are exaggerated. Either way, you quickly realize nobody's using Google Maps out here. You mount your horse. He sighs. You take it as encouragement. Ahead, the land stretches into soft, golden hills. The grass combed by wind, the sky painted with smears of soft pink and steel gray. You shift in the saddle too rigid, but it'll get better. The others start to ride. No commands, no countdown, just movement. You nudge your horse forward, and he obeys. Behind you, the last ember of the morning fire is buried in ash. Ahead of you, the steppe rolls on like a lullaby in motion. And just like that, you've begun. The first hour in the saddle is humbling. Your thighs ache, your spine discovers new ways to protest, and your horse, clearly the most patient member of this expedition, lets out a low huff every time you shift your weight, like a sack of confused flour. But still you ride. Because that's what Mongolian nomads did. Not just once, not just in spring, but constantly, season after season, generation after generation, chasing balance with the land, the herd, and the sky. You find your rhythm eventually. It's not a gallop, not a trot. More like a sway, like riding the breath of the earth itself. The others ride ahead and beside you, their gear packed tightly behind their saddles, sheepskin bags, leather bundles, pouches, strung with little clattering charms. It's not random. Everything has a purpose. Let's start with the food. The first stop isn't to rest. It's to eat. Mid-morning, just when your stomach starts to politely tap you on the ribs, the caravan halts near a shallow stream. The horses dip their muzzles, the goats graze. Someone, of course, has brought a yak butter thermos, because caffeine isn't universal, but fat and salt are. You're handed something that looks like a granola bar, but feels like a stone-dried curds or arrol. You chew, then keep chewing. Then chew some more. Eventually, it softens into a tangy crumble that leaves your jaw sore and your soul oddly satisfied. Mainstream historical fact, Mongolian nomads carried arrol and dried meats as staple travel foods. These were highly compact, energy-dense, and most importantly, resistant to spoilage. No refrigeration out here. Just sun, wind, and technique passed down for centuries. But it's not all protein and gristle. There are surprises, too. A girl pulls a twist of cloth from her bag, unfolds it, and reveals a handful of candied fruits. Apricots, plums, even a sliver of what might be honey turnip. She pops one into her mouth and hands you another. It's sweet. So sweet it cuts through the wind like a song. You watch as others unpack more of their travel fare. Round flat breads stored in wooden boxes. Jars sealed with wax, maybe fermented vegetables, or preserved sheep's tail fat, depending on the season. One man unfolds a leather pouch and reveals something miraculous: dumplings. Cold, yes, but stuffed with spiced mutton and onion, and still somehow comforting. Fringe detail. Some Mongolian travelers in the 14th century were known to carry entire small ovens, metal boxes with coal slots, to warm food during longer stops. These weren't common, but one Italian merchant wrote that a caravan he joined had a portable fire stomach that breathed heat like a dragon. That description may be poetic, but still impressive. You stretch your legs as others refill their water skins. The containers are leather or felt, sometimes lined with resin, and often strung with carved bone toggles for easier carrying. You notice one man dipping his into the stream, not filtering, just trusting. You hesitate, but follow suit. The water's cold and sharp with mountain melt. It tastes ancient. In a good way. Someone else walks by with something under their arm. At first, you think it's a blanket. Then it moves. It's a travel cat. Yes, you heard right. A large, grouchy-looking tabby who's apparently part of the caravan tucked into a sling-like royalty. For mice, the owner explains, though, you suspect the cat knows its value and charges in naps. Historians still argue whether pets were truly part of Mongol nomadic gear or just tolerated mascots, but scattered references do hint at falcons' dogs and even cats joining long migrations, sometimes for protection, sometimes for pest control, sometimes just because. You mount up again. This time, a little more confidently. As you ride, the talk turns to tools. Every rider carries a knife, not tucked away but visible ready. The standard utility blade is small curved with a bone or horn handle. It's used for everything slicing meat, repairing tack, even whittling when boredom strikes. One man sharpens his against a whetstone tied to his saddle horn with twine. Another pulls out a leather needle kit, not for sewing clothes, but for fixing gear. Saddles bags, even the occasional tent tear. You ask to see it and are handed a small roll of felt. Inside are curved needles, sinew threads, waxed cords, and something that looks suspiciously like a tiny horseshoe. Just in case, they say. There's no such thing as packing light here, only packing smart. Even the clothing is strategic. You thought your borrowed deal, the traditional Mongolian robe, was overkill when they handed it to you this morning. Long, heavy, secured with a wide sash. But now, hours into the ride, you're grateful. The overlapping folds block wind like armor, and the thick fabric keeps your core warm even as your face goes numb. You're beginning to understand. These people don't just move through the landscape, they move with it. As the sun arcs higher, the air warms. Layers are peeled off and stowed in saddle packs. A baby goat tucked into a pannier earlier for being too sleepy now pokes its head out and bleats. Someone laughs. Someone else starts singing. It's here on the open steppe, with dust kicking behind hooves and the sky so wide you feel it pressing against your thoughts, that you realize something. This isn't travel. This is life, ongoing, uninterrupted, whole, and everything packed: the knives, the cheese, the poems folded into sleeves, the small animal companions. All of it matters. Not because of how far it gets you, but because of who you are when you arrive. You ride until your legs no longer remember a time they weren't riding. By now, the landscape is beginning to shift. The open steppe rolls into hills. Grasslands grow sparser, and low rocky outcrops rise like the backs of sleeping giants. The wind tastes different too. Drier, dustier, scented faintly with pine and smoke from distant fires. But the caravan doesn't stop. Because nomads didn't just pack for the terrain they were in, they packed for where they were going, and that meant layers, literal and metaphorical. You feel it first in the air, the edge of cold. Not enough to bite, but enough to raise goosebumps beneath your robe. It's a reminder that weather here is a creature with moods capable of shifting in minutes. Mongolian nomads, of course, knew this, which is why one of the most essential things they carried, especially in colder months, was a weatherproofing plan. That starts with the deal, yes, but it doesn't end there. Underlayers of wool and linen, fur-lined boots wrapped with leather, and hand-stitched mittens filled with down feathers, all packed flat and layered tight. You pass a rider adjusting his scarf, and you catch a glimpse of something gleaming beneath a silver-threaded amulet tied with horsehair. Keeps frost from finding the lungs, he murmurs. Half joke, half belief. Mainstream historical fact. Many Mongol travelers wore amulets, pendants, or charms sewn into their clothing or packed in their gear, not just for faith, but for physical protection. Some were embroidered with family sigils. Others carried herbal pouches thought to ward off illness, or wardens of the unseen. You ask about the herbs, and someone lets you sniff a pouch. It smells of dried sage and juniper with a whisper of sour milk. We burn it if someone starts coughing, they explain, or if the wind carries bad dreams. You nod like you understand, and part of you does. You've seen the sky change moods without warning. You've watched horses shiver when clouds gather on the horizon. But tonight, there are no clouds, only stars. You finally stop for camp as twilight dusts the hills in violet shadow. The horses are unbridled and turned loose to graze. A soft bell tinkles on one of their necks, enough to help locate them if they wander not loud enough to disturb the hush. The yurts or gairs won't be set up tonight, not for a short stop. Instead, the group moves like muscle memory, unpacking bundles, laying hides over the grass, stacking saddle pads for pillows. This is the portable home, the pocket-sized nest, and out comes the fire kit. You expect flint and steel, but what appears instead is a small round tin, lacquered painted with clouds. Inside, tucked into felt, is a set of fire tools, a rod, a blade, curls of birch bark, a pinch of pine resin. One rider strikes a spark expertly, and within moments, flames curl skyward. The scent is earthy sharp and comforting. Someone hands you a bowl, soup, or maybe stew. Hard to tell in the dark, but it's hot and savory and filled with root vegetables, bits of lamb, and the unmistakable chew of dumpling dough. The broth warms your throat like a blessing. You eat in silence, only breaking it once to sigh. Someone laughs softly nearby. They know that sound. Fringe detail. In some nomadic groups, the first sip of hot broth was poured onto the ground as an offering. Sometimes to the land, sometimes to ancestors, sometimes just as a thanks to the journey. You see it tonight too. A rider lifts her bowl tips a few drops into the earth, then drinks. No words, just ritual. As the fire burns low, the tools come out. No, not weapons. Instruments. One man unfolds a morin-kur, the horsehead fiddle. Its strings hum as he tunes them slowly, gently, like coaxing a song from sleep. Another unrolls a jaw harp, slips it between his teeth, and begins to play a rhythm that doesn't ask for applause. It just is. You lie back staring at stars you forgot had names. A shooting one streaks by. Someone murmurs something in a dialect you don't know. You guess it's a wish. Historian debates. There are a few about this part, whether Mongol caravans truly packed instruments regularly, or if that was reserved for celebratory gatherings. Some scholars say yes, especially the elite. Others say no music was for home, not the road. But here's the truth: when you travel this far, you bring pieces of home with you. Otherwise, you lose yourself in the miles. You watch the fiddler. His bow is curved. The instrument is carved with patterns older than most maps. He doesn't perform. He remembers each note a footstep retraced. Eventually, someone brings out the blankets. Sheepskin mostly. Some felted. Others woven with bright dyes and geometric symbols. You roll yourself in one, surprised by its weight, its warmth, its scent of lanolin and smoke. You're offered one final cup. Fermented mare's milk. Let's be honest, you hesitate, but you're in this now. So you take a sip. It's sour, tangy, fizzing with something like life itself. And then, unexpectedly, it's good. Not in a, I want a gallon of this way, but in a yes, this is real. This is right kind of way. Someone sees your face and grins. Now you're one of us. You hum again involuntarily. That same soft note from before. And you understand. Not just the comfort of a warm drink, or the beauty of songs under stars, but the logic of it all. Everything they pack, every pouch, every slice of cheese, every tool and blanket and tune, isn't just for survival. It's for wholeness. Because long journeys aren't only hard on the body, they wear on the spirit. And Mongolian nomads, They knew how to carry both. Dawn comes not with a trumpet, but with hooves. You wake to the sound of the herd returning gentle clopping over dew-wet grass, a low nicker here and there, and the jingle of the bell you heard last night. It's soft, soothing, rhythmic, like the earth remembering how to breathe. The fire has gone out, but its embers still whisper heat. Someone is already awake, crouched beside it, coaxing a new flame with practiced hands. You smell tea brick tea boiled with milk and a pinch of salt. It's poured into shallow bowls and passed around without ceremony. You sip. It tastes like morning with a hint of smoke and survival. You rise slowly, brushing straw from your robe, and stretch until your spine clicks. Around you, the camp stirs. There's no barking of orders, no whistles, no frantic movement. Just people doing what they've done hundreds of times before, packing a home into pieces and tying them back onto horses. And now you see the true core of their mobility, the packs themselves. Mainstream historical fact: Mongolian nomads developed highly efficient methods of loading their belongings onto animals, particularly using wooden pack frames and carefully layered saddle structures that allowed weight to be distributed evenly over long distances. Horses, oxen, and especially camels were all part of this portable infrastructure. You walk past a camel now, massive, shaggy, blinking slowly in the morning light. Its saddle is a miniature architecture of ropes and compartments, rolled up bedding, bundles of kindling, a box of medicinal herbs sealed with wax. One small crate holds cheese so aged it could probably outlive empires. And beside it, carefully balanced on top, is a carved wooden chest, painted red, edged in brass. A lock dangles from the latch. Not for theft prevention, you're told, but for symbolism. What's inside, you ask? The rider shrugs. Memories. Okay, that tracks. Because here's your quirky detail for the day: many nomads packed memory boxes for long journeys. These weren't just keepsakes, they were tactile anchors. A scrap of an old map, a lock of a child's hair, a piece of jewelry too heavy to wear. Items not necessary for survival, but crucial for sanity. You pass another pack horse carrying an elaborate bundle, swaddled in felt and bound with rope knots that look like art. It takes 2 riders to lift it down when the group stops again a few hours later. They unfold it with care. Inside, a yurt wall. Yes, an actual wall, one segment of the collapsible circular frame that makes up the outer structure of a GER. It's slatted wood, hinged with rawhide, flexible, yet strong. This journey, you learn, isn't just travel, it's migration. And migration means carrying home with you, in parts like bones that can be reassembled. The frame is leaned against a cart to dry from last night's condensation. Another rider unfurls the yurt's felt covering, and you're struck by how light it looks for something that can resist winter winds. Turns out, it's made of compressed sheep's wool soaked in boiling water and pounded flat with paddles. Historians still argue whether this process originated independently across nomadic cultures or was passed from tribe to tribe like a communal invention. What's agreed upon? It works. It's brilliant. It's warm. And it smells, well, like wet sheep. You try not to comment, but one woman laughs. First time, right? You nod. She gestures to a flat rock and invites you to help with breakfast prep. Here comes the next staple bortsog. Think deep-fried dough somewhere between a donut and a biscuit, made from flour water, a touch of butter, and fried in mutton fat over a portable iron pan. The pan is old, so old its surface looks like a topographical map, but it cooks beautifully. The dough puffs and browns, and soon your hands are greasy and warm. You tear off a piece and dip it in the tea. It soaks just enough before falling apart in your mouth. It's oddly perfect. Fringe detail. Some families carried special wooden molds to shape their bortsog into symbols. Sunbursts, spirals, knots. These were more than decorative. They were believed to bring fortune for the journey. You spot one nearby etched with a triple spiral, darkened by time and touch. And that's the magic of this world, isn't it? Nothing is just what it seems. A chest holds memories. A pan carries generations. A knot is a prayer you can eat. You finish your piece, lick your fingers, and look around. Someone is braiding a horse's mane into tight rows. Another checks the leather straps on a saddle, pulling them taut and humming as they work. A child no older than 8 is stacking stones in a spiral pattern just outside the camp. What's that for, you ask? They glance up. To remember we were here? You smile. You don't touch it. Some things are sacred in their simplicity. You help load the last packs, adjust the cinch. Offer a hand to a tired rider who spent the night coughing. They nod grateful, then hand you a bundle. Cheese, they say. You take it. It's rock hard, wrapped in cloth and labeled with charcoal strokes. Spring batch year of the rabbit. You're told it lasts forever. Or close enough? It's packed not because it's tasty, but because it doesn't melt, spoil, or complain. You chew it later. It squeaks between your teeth like it's trying to tell you something. Possibly, I am eternal. You believe it. By midday, the group is riding again, lighter somehow despite the gear. And you finally understand the rhythm pack ride. Unpack, eat, rest, repack ride. It's a life not of possessions, but of processes. A choreography between body and beastland and wind. A caravan isn't just about movement. It's about knowing what to carry and what to leave behind. You hum again, and the wind answers with a tug at your robe. Message received. By the time the sun starts slipping toward the edge of the sky, painting everything in that golden orange shimmer that makes even cow dung look like art, you're deep into the steppe. The landscape has stretched out around you like a giant breathing hide, mottled with scrubby tufts, rolling gently horizon after horizon, without fences or phone towers. You ride close to the pack animals, partly because their slow and steady pace suits your saddle-sore bones, and partly because you're just nosy. What else do they carry, you wonder? Surely more than memory boxes and immortality cheese. Turns out yes. Quite a bit more. You spot a long flat bundle lashed securely to the side of a camel. It's swaddled in layers of cloth and tucked beneath a weather-treated tarp. When the caravan halts to rest beside a low stream, you finally get to see it unwrapped a disassembled bow. Mainstream historical fact, Mongolian composite bows were engineering marvels of their time. Made from wood horn and sinew, glued together with fish bladder resin, they were powerful, portable, and shockingly accurate, even from horseback. Genghis Khan's warriors could hit a target the size of your fear at 200 meters while galloping sideways. You hold one half of the bow in your hands. It's smooth and slightly curved, light as a whisper, but dense with energy, like it's waiting to sing. The string is coiled separately in a small pouch, along with thumb rings carved from bone, and one that looks suspiciously like jade. The archer nearby notices your interest. Want to try stringing it? She asks, already grinning. You attempt it. Your entire upper body regrets the decision immediately. Apparently, the technique involves both strength and leverage, like wrestling a very determined serpent while pretending to remain dignified. You give up halfway through. She finishes it with one fluid motion, not even breaking a sweat. Fringe detail. Some Mongolian bows were painted with geometric patterns or stylized animal motifs, both to protect the wood and imbue the weapon with spirit. You spot a curling dragon etched just above the grip, its tongue forked like lightning. The archer tells you it's to guide the shot. You're not sure if she means spiritually or aerodynamically, maybe both. As evening presses closer, you help unpack the camp again. This time the gear feels more familiar. Bedrolls, fire tools, cooking kits that nest inside each other like wooden matryoshka. You're starting to recognize patterns? The placement of stones around the fire pit, the way saddles are leaned just so to dry the layering of garments hung from makeshift lines to shake out dust and scent. And here comes the next surprise, the portable altar. Yes, right there beside the saddlebags and stew pot, someone unfolds a small wooden stand with flared legs and a carved top. It holds a statue, tiny golden wrapped in cloth when not in use. A strip of blue silk is tied above it, fluttering like smoke. One woman adds a piece of dried fruit. Another lights incense from a twist of pine resin. No one bows. No chanting. Just presence. Respect. Is it Buddhist, you ask? Sometimes one elder says. He doesn't elaborate. Historians still argue whether these traveling shrines were originally Buddhist shamanic or a kind of cultural hybrid. What they agree on is that faith, like everything else out here, is adaptable. There's room for the wind and for doubt. Dinner tonight is a stew called suivan thick noodles, stir-fried with slices of mutton carrots, onions and cabbage if you're lucky. The noodles were rolled and sliced earlier, then dried in a cloth pouch, tied to a saddle until evening. It's simple, salty, hearty, the kind of meal that sticks with you, even if you forget your own name. You eat cross-legged on the ground, warming your palms on the tin bowl, listening to someone retell a folk story about a man who tried to race a storm and ended up with hooves. You don't catch every detail, but the punchline involves thunderous sheep and someone yelling, "Well, that wasn't in the plan." Everyone laughs. You laugh too, a little behind, but it doesn't matter. Here's a small wonder: a wooden box is passed around after dinner. Inside, dominoes. Worn smooth, each piece carved by hand. The younger kids play in the dirt. The adults don't supervise, they play too. There's no divide between elder and child, at least not in fun. You watch someone pull out a pouch and pour a handful of polished stones into a circle scratched into the earth. They call it shagai ankle bones, used as dice, as game tokens, even as fortunes. The bones land with different sides up horse, sheep, goat, camel. The outcome decides something: who goes first, who washes the bowls, maybe who packs the altar tomorrow. Fringe belief. Some say these bones carry spirit, that they echo the movements of ancestors or predict luck. Others just like the clicking sound. As night settles deeper, the stars emerge like breadcrumbs scattered across the sky. There's no light pollution out here. Every star is visible. Every constellation feels close enough to touch. You pull your blanket tighter and lean back against a saddle. Somewhere nearby, someone plucks a two-stringed morin khur, a horsehead fiddle with long echoing strokes. The sound is haunting, like the voice of the land itself, retelling stories you forgot you knew. And right then it hits you. This isn't just a camp. This isn't just survival. It's a culture built one portable piece at a time. You close your eyes. The wind tugs at your sleeve like a cat demanding attention. You hum softly under your breath, and the night hums back. By morning, the camp has already begun to disappear. Not dramatically. There's no magic trick. Just the practiced quiet of people who've done this 100 times. Fires reduced to embers. Saddle straps cinched with calm efficiency. Cooking pots wiped clean and tucked back into their felt-lined bags. The smell of tea hangs in the air, sharp with smoke and salt. You stretch beneath a pale blue sky and rub your eyes with the sleeve of your deal. It still smells faintly of sheep. Of course it does. Today you're helping pack the essentials, which, as it turns out, is not as straightforward as it sounds. You begin with the textiles: rolled felt blankets, extra clothes, sheepskins softened and oiled to the texture of old velvet. Everything is rolled, not folded. Folding creates creases. Creases turn to cracks. And nothing survives out here if it cracks. You help lash one bundle shut with a strip of leather, then another that smells oddly of beeswax. Inside it, a pouch of dried herbs wrapped in oilskin. You ask what they're for. Medicine, someone answers, and tea. sometimes both. Mainstream historical fact: Mongolian nomads traditionally used wild plants like thyme juniper and rhubarb root for healing and flavoring. Thyme especially was a multi-tool. It soothed sore throats, repelled insects, and when steeped, made a tea strong enough to wake the dead. Or at least help you fake it for another day of riding. Fringe detail: some herbalists believed certain plants only worked if picked under the right phase of the moon. You catch someone turning a stalk 3 times before placing it in a pouch. You don't ask why. You've learned better by now. Next come the tools. You carry a bundle of metal, small but dense, wrapped in cloth. Unrolling it reveals knives, fire strikers, and a curious device that looks like a hybrid between a chisel and a spoon. It's a hoof pick. You try not to be disappointed. Someone else packs a set of needles longer than your finger, each threaded through a scrap of leather like a strange porcupine. There are sinew spools too, and thimbles carved from horn. Sewing isn't a luxury here. It's survival. The sewing kit is passed from one saddlebag to another, followed closely by a wooden box. Inside are seals, stamps, brushes, inkstones. Yes, amid all this dust and sinew and salted tea, there is still calligraphy. Because here's the secret: nomads are not just practical, they're poetic. You pass by someone kneeling in the dirt, carefully brushing ink onto paper with a stiff little brush. The characters are fluid, elegant, impossibly precise. You watch them finish the last stroke, blow gently, then roll the paper and tuck it into a bamboo tube. For my sister, he says. She travels with another clan. He nods. And how will she get it? He shrugs. Someone will pass through. Historians still argue whether these handwritten messages were widespread among the general population or limited to scholars and nobility. But oral tradition suggests otherwise. Stories survive not because they were written, but because people cared enough to carry them across rivers, over mountains, and through storms that erased all traces but the telling. You wander past a pair of horses being saddled and notice something peculiar: a bundle wrapped in rawhide and slung low near the belly. What's that? Cheese? Of course, but not just any cheese. Aged curds, called biaslag, wrapped tight and left to ferment under pressure. It smells like socks that won a war, but it lasts forever, and with enough tea, it's edible. You try a piece. You regret trying a piece. Still, you nod respectfully, because it is food, and food is precious. The caravan begins to move again. You mount up your knees, protesting like an old wooden chair, and settle into the rhythm of travel. Ahead of you, the line stretches out. Riders pack animals, dogs trotting alongside with the casual arrogance of creatures who've been here longer than anyone. You pass a man adjusting the load on a camel. Tucked between the blankets is something rectangular, metal-rimmed. A mirror, you ask, surprised. He laughs. A stove. Turns out it's a collapsible firebox, used when dry wood is scarce. It burns dung twigs, even tightly packed grass. One flap swings open to reveal a shallow tray of ash. He slaps the side with a practiced hand, folds it closed, and moves on. You're starting to realize something. Everything here folds, collapses, shrinks. Portability is not just preference, it's philosophy. And then there's the musical gear. You see it only in the evenings when the wind dies down and the stars wake up. Someone unpacks a flute carved from bird bone. Another tunes a stringed instrument with pegs wrapped in sinew. The sound they create is something between a lullaby and a prayer. One elder plays a jaw harp comus, pressing it to his lips and plucking until the air seems to shimmer. It's haunting metallic, like bees humming at the edge of dream. He sways gently, eyes half closed. You sit nearby, cross-legged in the dust, watching sparks drift upward like fireflies in reverse. No one says much. No one needs to. Because here in the middle of the steppe, surrounded by gear that folds and flattens and survives against all odds, you finally understand. The point of these packs is not just utility, it's continuity. Every stitch, every wrapped pouch, every horn spoon and herb bundle, they all carry something more than function. They carry intention, memory, connection, hope. You reach into your own bag, pull out the smooth stone someone handed you 2 nights ago. You still don't know its purpose, but you keep it anyway, because some things don't need to be explained to be true. The caravan moves on, and you follow. You wake to wind. Not the loud kind, the slap your face, sand in your socks sort of gusts, but the gentler version. Whisper wind, the kind that sneaks through the seams of your felt blanket and rustles the grass like it's clearing its throat politely. The morning is crisp. The light is soft. Somewhere someone is already stirring tea, and the smell of burning dung again rises on the breeze. You roll up your bedding and notice something new in the camp. A circle of people all gathered around a low table. They're passing something between them, each taking a turn with reverent quiet. You inch closer, pretending to fiddle with your bootstraps. What they're holding is a knot. A knot made of fabric bone and what looks like leather cord, all twisted into a compact bundle. It's oddly beautiful, like a talisman or a riddle. One woman sees you watching and smiles. "It's our traveling knot," she says. You raise an eyebrow. She explains it's tradition for some families to weave small symbolic bundles for long journeys. Each layer of material represents something: a wish for strength, a memory of home, a reminder to return. They're not magic per se, but they hold weight. Mainstream historical fact: Mongolian families often carried zayav or protective bundles during journeys. Some were religious, some purely personal. They might include hair from a family, horse ashes from a hearth, or thread from a sibling's garment. Fringe detail. One recorded account from the 1700s describes a warrior who carried a knot made from the sleeve of his mother's robe. He claimed it stopped an arrow mid-flight. Historians debate whether this is folklore bravado or very lucky stitching. But the knot was kept, passed down, still tied. You're offered a turn with the bundle. You hold it in both hands. It's surprisingly heavy, not physically, but in that odd way a photograph or a last letter can weigh more than a sack of grain. You pass it along gently and go find breakfast. Today's menu: boiled flour balls. They're dense, chewy, suspiciously filling. You're told they were invented for riders who didn't want to stop for lunch. You're also told they once broke someone's tooth, possibly in the same day. Packing begins again. This time you help with the felt. You hadn't thought much about it before, just assumed it was blanket material or saddle padding. But now, watching the layers rolled, stacked, tied to camelbacks, you realize this is the house, the GER, or at least its bones. You see the wooden frame being disassembled and sorted like a puzzle. Each lattice piece numbered with carved marks. The central support columns, painted orange and etched with swirling patterns, are bundled like sacred spears. The smoke hole ring is last wrapped in thick wool and carried with surprising care. A child runs past with a felt strap over their shoulder, grinning like they've been entrusted with gold. You ask how long it takes to build the gear again from scratch. 2 hours, someone says. You blink. They nod. 3 if we talk too much. You don't even finish assembling IKEA furniture in that time. Historians still argue whether the circular design of the GER, its perfect symmetry, its collapsible efficiency, was purely practical or carried spiritual meaning. Some say the round shape mirrors the cosmos, the sun, the unity of people. Others say it's just smart engineering. Maybe it's both. As you help hoist one roll of felt onto a camel, you notice a small stitched pattern on the edge. It's not part of the standard embroidery. This one's hidden like a signature. A bird wings spread wide, stitched in black thread. "Whose is this mine?" says a young girl, maybe 10, standing proudly. "It's so I can always find my piece." You smile. In your world, Children sign library books or lunchboxes. Here they embroider their homes. As the camp continues to collapse into itself like a flower, folding for sleep, you notice the care taken with fire tools. Someone gathers embers in a metal box, cushioned with ash and straw. It will stay warm all day, carried by camel, and used to spark the next campfire that evening. Why not just start a new fire, you ask? Old fire remembers, a woman answers. That stops you. Old fire remembers. You're still chewing on that thought when someone tugs your sleeve. It's time to mount up again. The saddle creaks, the animal snorts, and off you go back into the sea of steppe. Hours pass in that strange, slow, fast way they always do out here. The landscape doesn't change, not really, but it never stays the same either. You pass through a valley, climb a ridge, find a dry riverbed filled with white stones, like the teeth of some ancient god. You stop at a wind-carved outcrop to stretch your legs. Someone is already stacking stones nearby, 3, then 5, then 7. You ask if it's an ovu, one of those traditional cairns used to mark sacred spots or wayfinding points. Yes, they say. And no, it's more of a thank you pile, a way of saying, we passed safely. Everyone adds one stone. You do too. Fringe detail. It's believed that if you circle an ovu 3 times and leave a small gift tobacco, coins a whisper, you're granted safe passage. Whether that's true or not, no one seems willing to skip the ritual, including you. Back on the trail, someone begins to sing. It's low, wordless, a kind of droning melody that fills the spaces between hoofbeats. You recognize the tune. It's the same hum, the same one Lucius followed, the same one that threaded itself into string salt scrolls. The sound of effort, of asking. You hum along quietly, because now you understand it's not about what you bring. It's what you carry forward, what you pass down, and what you hum when the world is quiet enough to listen. The wind shifts again. Not dramatically, just a subtle change in tone, like a pause in conversation. You're high on a ridge now, looking down at a new valley. It yawns wide below you, brushed with golden grass dotted with small black shapes that upon squinting reveal themselves as grazing herds. Someone beside you points and says, ours. And you realize this is the next stop. Not random, not guessed, chosen. Before you descend, there's a moment of stillness. Everyone's looking, not talking, just measuring the land in silence. Because this isn't just where the next camp will stand. It's where fire will return, where tea will be poured, where stories will grow roots for a night or two. Choosing a camp spot isn't casual. It's intuitive, sacred, and, yes, practical. Mainstream historical fact, Mongolian nomads didn't camp just anywhere. They followed traditional routes called nutag, seasonal pastures, handed down through generations. Families often returned to the same hills year after year, guided by memory, weather, and the shape of the land. And yes, there were rules. Never pitch too close to another family's jeer without permission. Don't set up camp where the wind cuts too sharply. Avoid resting where herds won't graze, but also follow feeling. Someone tells you that elders listen to the land. They test the earth with their palms. They watch how horses behave. One woman swears she can feel it in her knees when the sight is wrong. Her daughter nearby laughs and says, it's just the damp. The daughter still defers. You begin the descent. The animals know. They move faster now, ears forward, sensing water and rest. You follow the rhythm. At the valley floor, it all unfolds in reverse. The camels lower. The frames are untied. The felt is unrolled. The fire tools are unpacked, ash still warm. There's no barking of orders, no blueprint. Everyone just knows what to do. You help raise a wall, then a roof, then the smoke hole. And suddenly, the jeer is alive again. A full-bodied breath exhaled onto the steppe. Inside, the hearth is lit. Not a fire yet, just an ember. A tongue of flame coaxed from the ash box with dried dung and thin slivers of wood. Someone hums while doing it. You've heard that tune before. The water pot is placed on top, and the kettle whistles. You're handed a bowl of tea, salty, milky, and hot. This is where comfort begins. This is what gets packed next. The not objects. The things you can't touch but carry anyway. Fringe detail oral tradition among Mongolian families often includes memory maps, songs or stories that guide future generations through land weather and wisdom. These aren't written down. They're recited, taught through repetition. Some say you can walk an entire season's route using nothing but a song passed down by your grandmother. Historians still argue whether these oral cartographies should be considered formal navigation systems. But what's formal, really, when the path still gets you there? After tea, there's a pause in activity. Not laziness, just spacing. A gap to let the world settle into its new shape. You sit just outside the GER, watching the light change. There's a boy nearby, fletching arrows. You didn't know that was something people still did by hand, but there he is, using bone tools and eagle feathers, focused and silent. You ask if he hunts. He nods once. Foxes, sometimes marmots. You think of asking more, but stop. There's something respectful about letting answers stay shallow, letting people keep their depths. He finishes one arrow and lays it carefully in a leather quiver. The quiver itself is stitched with red thread in the shape of a rising sun. You're starting to realize everything here means something. Or once did, even the mundane, like the saddlebags. Earlier you saw a woman unpacking them, small cloth pouches full of herbs, dried cheese, a string of tiny bells. Not practical, you thought at first, but now, watching her place, one near the sleeping area, you get it. The herbs are for calming. The cheese is ancestral, her grandfather's favorite. The bells, to call dreams home. You can't prove any of that, but you wouldn't argue either, because stories like that are true in the telling, and there's a power in that kind of truth. The sky darkens and lanterns are lit, flickering bowls of oil shadows, dancing on the curved GER walls. Someone recites a poem. You catch only pieces. Wind walks backward in the dark. Moon listens, but does not answer. We are threads in a larger stitch. It's not written down. You doubt it ever will be, but it stays with you. Because what you've learned, what you keep learning, is that the real packing list isn't things. It's moments. It's gestures. It's the thread tying memory to motion. You help fasten a horse's reins to a peg outside the GR. The animal nuzzles your hand. You're not sure if it's affection or a search for sugar. You give it both just in case. Inside, the GER has settled. Sleep is blooming in the corners. You lie down on felt that's still warm from the sun. You tuck your coat under your head. And somewhere beyond the wall, someone is still singing. A lullaby, maybe. Or a prayer. Or just a note to keep the dark company. You close your eyes. And think of Lucius again. He would have loved this. Would have cataloged every pouch, measured every silence, and scribbled emotional topography. Not kill the soft terrain of memory. You smile, and sleep follows soon after. You wake up to the sound of hooves. Not close, just far enough to echo without urgency. It's morning now. Pale blue sky edged with gold. The kind of cold that clings to breath and makes tea taste better. You step outside the GER barefoot, the chill biting, but welcome. There's already movement across the camp. Smoke curling from vents, figures bent at cooking fires. Horses being saddled with sleepy hands. And in the center of it, all the same question flickers in your mind. What stays? Because even with all this motion, this preparation, some things never leave. One mainstream historical fact for centuries. Mongolian nomads preserved continuity not through permanent architecture or cities, but through patterns, migration rhythms, seasonal rituals, and the memory of place. Some families returned to the same summer pasture for hundreds of years, their presence etched into the wind, not stone. That's the secret, isn't it? Packing isn't always about leaving. Sometimes it's about knowing what you're bringing back with you. You help roll the felt again. This time, your hands remember the folds. You know which way the seams lie, where to apply pressure, when to pause. You're becoming part of the rhythm. And that's when you notice something new. In one corner of the camp, a small shrine has been assembled, no larger than a stool. It holds a carved wooden horse, a strip of blue silk, and a polished stone the size of a heart. You ask? They tell you it's for safe passage. Not just for today's journey, but all journeys, past and future. The blue silk is a kadag, a ceremonial scarf representing peace and respect. You're told you can tie one too if you want. No rules. Just meaning. You do. Yours is clumsy, uneven, but sincere. And the elder who watches smiles like that's all that matters. Fringe detail. There's a long-held belief in some Mongol communities that wind knots, small tangles tied into string, can catch a spirit's attention. Some travelers used to carry them tucked into sleeves or saddle flaps as personal anchors. If lost or separated, they'd untie the knot and whisper a name into the wind. Historians still argue whether these practices were spiritual metaphors or literal beliefs. But either way, they linger, like most good rituals do. As the caravan begins to form, you help fasten the final bundles. The food satchels now lighter, the bedding dusted clean, the kettle emptied cooled, wrapped in cloth, and placed near the front. Always near the front. Someone offers you dry cheese for the road. You try not to break a tooth. Fail. Still, it's comforting. You ride part of the way today. Not a grand horse, just a sturdy one with one white sock and a habit of stopping to inspect rocks. You don't mind. The steppe opens around you. It always does. Wide, windswept horizon stretched. The kind of view that dissolves stress before it can form. You could ride for hours here and never hit a wall. Because there are no walls, just airgrass and the distant shapes of possible futures. You reach a small river by late morning. The crossing is slow but peaceful. Everyone dismounts, lets the animals drink, kneels to rinse their faces. You follow. The water is icy, but invigorating. The older herder beside you fills a leather pouch, ties it shut with red twine, and mutters something into it. You don't ask. You're learning. After the river, there's a break. Lunch is simple, more tea, some dumplings warmed in a pot balanced over hot stones. One child offers you a boiled egg from her pocket. You say yes. You do not ask how long it's been in her pocket. It's the best egg you've had in weeks. Then the stories begin again, always over food. One woman tells of a storm so strong it lifted her gear clean off the earth. It flew 2 feet, she says proudly. We caught it. Another man swears his grandfather once tied a message to a hawk, and it returned with a reply. In better handwriting, he adds, "You're not sure what's true. You're not sure it matters, because by now you understand." What gets packed for a long journey? Yes, there are things. Knives, pots, felt, cheese ropes, bits of comfort, scraps of prayer, but mostly stories. That's the real cargo, carried not on carts, but in breath. You begin to gather your own. The first night's awkward laughter, the tea you didn't know how to pour, the knot you tied too tight, the silence of the stars, the echo of the wind saying yes softly when no one asked a question. You tuck those moments away, somewhere behind your ribs where memory doesn't need a bag, because you're moving again. The sun is higher now. The next ridge is waiting. The road unspools in front of you like a ribbon scribbled across earth. The horse begins to walk, and you hum without meaning to. A tune you don't know. A tune you must have packed, just in case. By evening, the light falls softer, the kind of golden hush that makes even dust look holy. You're riding again, not quickly, just enough to feel the rhythm in your knees, the echo of hooves thudding against packed earth. The caravan has stretched and shifted over the course of the day. People drift. Animals wander slightly off track, only to return when whistled for. No one shouts. There's no need. This too is part of what's packed. Patience, flexibility, the understanding that getting there isn't always the point. You cross a ridge around sunset and see where you'll camp tonight. A narrow valley hemmed by hills, scattered with low scrub and blessed with a thin stream that snakes like a silver thought through the grass. You feel it before you see it, that this will be a good place to stop. Mainstream historical fact, Mongolian nomads were masters of site selection. Camps were placed with precision, shielded from wind near water, but not too close open to sun, but protected from flash floods. 1,000 variables balanced on instinct and memory. Tonight, your instincts agree. You want to linger here. The tents are set quickly now. You even help with one. Your hands finally know the folds and tugs and ties. You're rewarded with a nod from the elder woman, who hasn't smiled since sunrise. That's currency here. Not coins, not titles, just respect quietly given. Dinner is late and sparse. Flatbread, a little goat meat, strong tea. You eat seated on a folded blanket, watching the smoke drift up toward a sky darkening fast. And then, without warning, someone begins to sing. Softly. A low, layered sound that builds without melody, without words. It vibrates in your chest like thunder from inside your own lungs. Throat singing. The sound Mongolian nomads are known for, and yet it still catches you off guard. Deep, echoing, unbelievably human. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. Fringe detail, among nomadic herders, it's said that throat singing mimics nature itself, wind over cliffs, the call of eagles, the rumble of the earth. Some traditions claim it's not just performance, it's a way of speaking to the land. Historians still argue whether the earliest forms of throat singing were spiritual or practical. But here tonight, there's no debate. It's working. It's not about entertainment. It's about presence. As the song fades, the fire dims. You lie back, arms folded beneath your head, watching stars arrive like old friends. One by one, unrushed, unbothered. And this is where you realize the final thing. Mongolian nomads always packed space. Not just physical space, though the open steppe offers more than enough of that, but mental space, emotional space, the space to wonder, to not know, to let the stars whisper whatever they want without rushing to interpret them. You think of Lucius, of scrolls and spirals, of rituals and experiments and tiny offerings of salt. You wonder what he'd make of all this. Then again, you know, he'd whisper to the stars too. He'd fall asleep with a feather in his hand and wake up smiling without knowing why. You stretch your legs out listening to the wind. It's changed again. A little cooler, a little more restless, but it's friendly. You think of all the things you've carried these past days, both in your bag and in your mind. A knife, a bowl, a broken string that still holds meaning, a name someone forgot, a question you're still asking. And now, finally, you let it all rest. Because the journey isn't over. It never is. But the night is here. And it's soft. So close your eyes. Let the fire crackle low. Let the stars do their quiet spinning. And know this, you've walked where others have walked. You've packed what matters. You've learned the rhythm of leaving and returning. You've written your own letter to the sky. And somewhere, even if only for a moment, the wind understood it. So rest. You've earned it. Let the horizon fade, now gently, as though pulled behind a velvet curtain. The last embers of the fire blink against the dark, and all around you, the world exhales. The tents are silent. The horses, still. Even the stream seems to hush its chatter in deference to the stillness of this hour. Let your breathing match the quiet rhythm of the steppe, slow, even like distant hooves on soft ground. Feel the weight of the blanket tucked around your shoulders, the comforting ache in your limbs after a long day's journey, the peace that comes from knowing you carried only what mattered and left nothing behind that wasn't ready to stay. Imagine the sky, now vast and speckled with stars, so bright they feel like whispers. You don't have to name them. Just know they're watching. They've seen 1,000 journeys like yours, and 1,000 more still to come. There's no rush, no destination pressing against your ribs, only the promise of movement when the wind calls again. So for now, be still. Let the hum return, that soft, soundless vibration of belonging. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Maybe by now you've already drifted off to sleep, and if so, we hope this story brought you peace of mind and helped you rest a little easier. Deep sleep makes life better, and we're truly happy to be part of that. Until next time, sweet dreams.